I'm sick of being broke. I was a very, very broke person growing up, and especially in college. So I had a chance to go work at Quicken, some people that changed my life, and went from broke to six figures in 6 months, and then turned into $250,000. My uncle always had me reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was playing Cash Flow Quadrant at 10, and I had these thoughts in my head for decades, literally. And then I'm seeing it, and I'm like, why am I so damn scared to do this? All these people are doing this, and as I was talking to these people trying to get mortgages, I realized they didn't come across very bright. I'm like, if you can do rentals, I can probably do this too. And that's when I finally got my first rental. And after a while, boom, got a bunch of rentals, started real estate brokerage, then I started mortgage brokerage, property management, and now here we are.
My grandfather has a great saying, which is you only have 20% of the information and 80% is up to instinct, whatever you want to call it. And not everyone's made for it.
And they're like, how can I be successful? How can I make money? I go, well, choose your poison, buddy. Like, what are you good at? Are you okay with making phone calls? Are you okay with door knocking? You got to pick something you're going to be good at, and you got to run with it.
Everybody, we are back today with another episode of the Fetchit Podcast, and we have my good buddy from Michigan, fellow Midwest boy, Matthew McCall-Stillman. Matt, how are you doing today, man?
Great. Thanks for having me, guys. Really excited to be here. And, can't believe that, a month ago, David? That's when we finally met?
Absolutely, dude.
Yeah. It feels like all three of us have had that moment in the last year where we met somebody special and grew into something fast. So
Absolutely.
It's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think, hell, Yoni, how long have you and I known each other? What, a year, maybe? Seems like it's been like 5 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think this might be the first time we've had three like Midwest boys. We got a Michigan guy, an Indiana guy, and an Ohio guy hanging out together. We're like, cornfield bros.
My dad went to Michigan. We grew up in Cleveland. You can imagine.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So everybody that knows Matt typically knows him as, my broker Matt, not just Matthew McCall-Stillman. So who was Matt, kind of at the beginning? Take us back to like, how did you get started in real estate? And then we'll dig into kind of your Airbnb story and how you got going into that. And then we'll dig into a little bit of your coaching, but like, what was kind of the beginning? How did you get started in the real estate world?
I got started indirectly or just kind of being around it. I finished up at U of M. I got my degree in finance and medical sciences, got 2 degrees. Didn't know if I wanted to be a doctor or if I wanted to go and do finance stuff and be cool like the guys on Wall Street, but stay in Michigan. Of course, that would never work, but that's college mentality for you. So as I was applying for some med school programs, PA program as well, some of the rules changed, and it was going to set me back another 6 months to a year, depending on what requirements were necessary. So I said, screw this. I'm sick of being broke. I was a very, very broke person growing up, and especially in college. So I had a chance to go work at Quicken. Worked at Quicken, met some people that kind of changed my life, and went from broke to 6 figures in 6 months, and then it turned into $250,000, a year. That's how I got started. But the thing that was crazy is I'm looking at all these people's, underwriting. I started teaching underwriting. I became the leader there, team lead. And I was looking at all these returns. I'm seeing all these people with, everybody's making 6 figures is what I was seeing. Like everybody who could buy houses. I couldn't believe how many people make 6 figures in this world. And I didn't even think that was possible. I thought it was a rarity. It was a special elite group that could make 6 figures. And that was kind of my first demystifying moment where I went, damn, these people are out here making money. Second moment was when I looked at almost all these people that were making 6 figures, probably 30% of them had rentals. And I was like, all these people got rentals. My uncle always had me reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was playing Cash Flow Quadrant at 10. And I had these thoughts in my head for decades, literally. And then I'm seeing it and I'm like, why am I so damn scared? Why am I so damn scared to do this? All these people are doing this. And as I was talking to these people trying to get mortgages, I realized they didn't come across very bright. I'm like, if you can do rentals, I can probably do this too. And that's when I finally got my first rental. And after a while, boom, got a bunch of rentals, started real estate brokerage. Then I started mortgage brokerage, property management. And now here we are.
It's fantastic, man.
Before David asks a question, I just want to say I have some very close friends that work and worked at Quicken right out of school in the Cleveland office. So I know it's an amazing culture, Quicken. Still have a friend still in the Cleveland office, Shmuel Kagerlitsky. I don't know if you know him, but yeah. Anyways, amazing company, great training, and we're excited to get into this. This is a unique story.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what I know that you're heavily into the short-term rental space now, and so was that first one? Was it a short-term rental, or did you go long-term rental because you thought that was easy and safe? Or
I brought this up on a coaching call the other night. It was long term, but the thing that a lot of people don't understand, it was my first deal was a partnership.
Hmm.
I had a friend that was making money, and I was just getting into it, but I was still afraid. A lot of people don't, they know you now. When you meet people, they know you now. They don't know that you went through all that same crap they're probably going through. And I was explaining to them, I was like, I was afraid. I was afraid I couldn't do it, and so I wanted a partner. And my buddy, he was on his way to becoming a multimillionaire very quickly, and he had a lot of cash. And he was like, I need write-offs. Help me out. So we set up a partnership.
Music to your ears, man.
Oh yeah, dude. No, it made my day. And it's hard to imagine it now, probably, if you know me well, but I approached it so trepidatiously. I was afraid he was going to tell me no or get bent. He's like, how dare you? But I was like, how about this? I'll bring 10% of the money. You bring 90%, but everything that we make, we split 50-50 above and beyond, all the cash and expenses for running it. And I said, as for a validation of me putting it together and running it, you don't have to do anything. You just be a silent partner. When it comes to the equity, if I do any add value play, let's say we buy a property for $100,000 and we put 50 grand into it, up to 150 to get that property going, we're going to split all value of that, still at the 90-10. But anything above 150, we sell it for 200. That 50,000 gets split 50-50.
Nice.
So we get equal splits on our initial capital, but we split evenly everything that I built up. So he was like, you know what? I love that because it incentivizes you to do well for us. So that was it. And that was my first 7 properties were that. And then I bought in for higher equity since then. So I have a larger percentage of those properties now. We started with a 20% management fee. So I was making my 10% plus that. So it's 30% on those properties. Now we're at 50. And then we kind of just kept scaling and bought more properties alone. And I think, coincidentally, the very first property we bought, we finally converted that last year to a short-term rental. Unfortunately, I think he's my second tenant I ever had, and he died, unfortunately. And we took it over, we rehabbed it, we turned it into an STR finally. And what's crazy is that property became 4 businesses, is what I realized. Like, A, it was a long-term rental. We learned that business. B, it was a partnership. So I learned the partnership game. C, it became a short-term rental. But D, it was also a co-host because I let my wife be the co-host manager for it. So, and she retired from her job as a pharmacist almost a year ago this November. So it's so amazing to see how if I didn't make that move, I wouldn't, and I also wouldn't have got my real estate brokerage going. I didn't even think about that till now, or my mortgage brokerage. So it really six businesses from one decision to finally go that route.
Yeah, and so this is why I preach to everybody that it's so important. Just get the first property. Who cares if it's not a home run? You could get a single, a base hit, doesn't matter if it cash flows $100 a month. Who gives a shit? As long as you're making something, because you just use that property to be your training wheels in 4 different avenues of business, 5 different if you're counting, brokerage and everything else. You just need that one property to get you training wheels, and then some people, that's why we talk to whenever we're talking about coaching, like getting an arbitrage. That's only like one aspect of everything. Like that really only harps on like cash flow. I'm not a big fan of like building an arbitrage business, but if you have somebody that's super timid and they're afraid to get in and they just need something, they need a little win just to prove that it works, get into an arbitrage property and you learn so much on the job training while you're making a little bit of cash. So yeah, that first property was your training wheels that kind of like, slung you into greatness that you're at now.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trust me, the more I think about it, I've been like, wow, that was such a major event. I'm glad you recaptured that too.
For sure, man.
Where, just for the audience to know, from that first property, where are you sitting at from a portfolio perspective right now? And part 2 to the question, what do you think is the biggest lesson in the scale that you remember that you feel holds dearest to your heart?
Owned, we have 51 properties now. And we manage another 36. So there's 67 Airbnbs between owned and managed. So we have a lot of experience at this point. And that scale has been huge. And I think kind of to answering that second part of that question, like, and I know you guys could probably resonate with this, but some people think you got to start off with one, or it's got to be just the perfect property, kind of like we just hit on, right? And that's not the case. And I've actually proven it in math that it doesn't have to be that way too. Like you can still, once you factor in appreciation and taxes, even if it's a cash flow net zero, it's still a win. It's still, you are better off because you learned a business. You might even learn it's not a good business for you, but because you now own that rental property, you are still ahead, period. As long as you bought right, of course. But scale wise, never ever discount the value of captured experience, because whether it's a good or bad property starting off, as you accrue like moment after moment, house after house, God, man, trust me. I look back and I see how I could have designed better. I could have managed better. I could have grown faster. I could have bought bigger. And you hear a lot, especially in the multifamily world, because that's also something I have been around. But I always say don't buy single family, buy multifamily. And I don't know that that's really the case for everybody, but I think what it is saying, don't be afraid to stay in these small cruddy deals. A lot of people go, I want to buy a cheap property that's cash flowing a ton, but usually anything that's still available at 15 to 25% cash on cash for a long-term rental, you're in a really rough market. You might be in a D or F area. And because of that, you also have a high volatility of theft or non-payment. So like, just because you're paying less for the asset doesn't mean you're not actually, in the grand scheme of holding it, not paying more. And that's an ignorant thought. And I try to express to people, you want to buy in C plus areas as much as possible. If you want to play the game of numbers, if you at scale at 100 properties in D and you presume 25% vacancy, it could work. And you got to presume,
but I think there's a lot of, I completely agree with that, because there's so many people that, they're like, oh yeah, I want to take the safer route. I'll buy the $50,000 property in Detroit. But it's like, then you are going to hate the game of real estate, because you're going to think, wow, real estate sucks because nobody ever pays their bills. I'm having to evict people right and left. They trash my properties, blah, blah, blah. Those are the people that you see in the YouTube comments saying real estate's a scam. It's all bullshit. Don't listen to these guys talking, But then if you're, somebody that's buying a nice property in a nice area that doesn't cash flow quite as much, and it doesn't pencil out to, some crazy cash on cash, but you never have to think about it for 5 years, like which one's better, And it appreciates, 20% or something over that 5 years. Yeah, it's something that is a big misnomer in the real estate world that drives me crazy.
You nailed it. I don't even need to talk anymore.
So we're all in the Midwest though. So let's talk about the Midwest a little bit, because now it seems like the Midwest is kind of, there's a big eyeball on it right now from the coastal, East Coast, West Coast, because you can't find cash flow out there. So everybody's looking in towards the Midwest. So what has kind of been you have a brokerage and everything else. Has there been a lot of outside influence? Are you seeing more investors, like out of state investors, coming in? And what's your thoughts on the Midwest real estate market?
I, like you, love it. And I've gotten to this point, I'm around on a lot of things. And, for the last couple of years, I've been focusing on being a great broker for short-term rentals. And then I was doing one-on-one coaching, but now my big focus for the rest of the year and into next year is, the group model. But I still want to help buy properties, but it's got to be with the right people. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of people are still chasing, the new shiny toy, right? They like the idea of having one, but they don't know what they're doing with it. And I brought up this concept of I could give you the best property in the best area, and they're like, oh great, yeah, I'll take it. I'm like, yeah, but will you? Because some people still need to see the data. I need to be a data. And if you're coming from California, Colorado, Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, whatever, the data is not the same here. It's just not. We don't have like the depth and width. We don't have the density. And because of that, some people are still not going to be willing to go that route. So for the people that are looking for opportunities and are okay with being ahead of the curve, Michigan Midwest is still very much ahead of the curve. And I bet you any of those people, if I told you, hey, don't you wish you could have bought in Florida or California 5 to 10 years ago? Damn right you would, right? 100%. There's no question. So That's the thought, right? And right now, I think the Midwest still has that opportunity. And if you are completely data driven, it's not going to be the right opportunity for you. So I think that that's kind of where that disparity comes. But for the people that can understand data indicators and like imply data, the enemy method, what's not there, here's what it is here. If you got 2 beds doing 50,000 on a lake, 4 beds probably not going to be doing 50. It's probably going to be doing a little bit more. So you need to see those things. If it's and trust me, I was looking at some this morning, but ugly 2-bed, but ugly. I mean, it's embarrassing that it's got like 84.2s, but it made 50 grand. And it's like the pictures are just manure. It's terrible in every way. And it made 50 grand. I'm like, God, like I could get any other 2-bed here and I could probably do 75. Doesn't even have a hot tub. So it's like, if we internalize that and look at a few other variations of data, looking at 3-bed and 4-bed sets in comparison, we can find out a lot of things. And I think anybody who's ready to be ahead of the curve should be looking at the Midwest.
I'll tell you, I think what you're describing about people is just it's a human fallacy, is that there's analysis paralysis, even within some masterminds that I'm a part of, that Dave and I are a part of. I've seen, not everybody, but I've seen people, but I'm almost done a build. For a year, they're still thinking about what they're going to do and they haven't done anything. And I think that some people need to work on their, the emotional self-limiting beliefs before getting into business, because they're going to find a problem and any question mark. My grandfather has a great saying. I think I want you to take the baton from this saying, which is, you only have 20% of the information and 80% is up to instinct, intuition, and whatever you want to call it. And not everyone's made for it. It's what it is. Like, don't do it then.
Yeah. Yeah. So, mutual friend of all of ours, the Carwells, Sarah and Emily, you've worked with them in the past, and they had something really, really good on their Instagram the other day, to where one of the properties that they had purchased, it was one of the lake house properties. They were saying that they just kind of like bought it on a gut feeling, like you were saying, Yoni. And they're like, I know this thing's going to make money. I know it's going to do well. And plus they're interior designers. They knew they were going to knock it out of the park. And I forget what the exact numbers were, but they essentially, like, if they would have gone off of AirDNA numbers, that it would have produced, I think it was like $30,000 or maybe even $40,000 annually less per AirDNA than what they actually achieved. And so, are you seeing that commonly in the Midwest?
It's funny you say that. I should do a post about this. Thanks for that. And yeah, they're great. I love them. They've actually improved our design approach. That's my biggest takeaway from them, and my willingness to bet on myself, which I've been doing since before. I was buying properties when there was no data. AirDNA and STR Insights were not even a thing. So it's like I had to make decisions based on my gut and my instinct of what I felt could be successful. And if it wasn't successful, I had to tweak it till it damn was. Yeah. And that's the true sign of an entrepreneur. If you want to be an entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur. If you want to be an investor, give your money to somebody that knows what to do. Right. But going back to that thought, appreciate you, man. I went, I looked at 5 of my properties that I bought. Like my oldest one, my first one, like my next couple, because those were the ones where I was most worried. And then my last few, and I think it might actually been 6 that I looked at. But what I found was some of it's going to sound like BS, but as best as I could remember what my projections were, I wrote those down. And then I went and I looked at what AirDNA said it could make. And I looked at what I had made in the last year. And I looked at all those variations. And what I actually found was my net on average between all the properties was 15% higher than my projections. And my projections were also higher than what AirDNA projected. So yeah, so it told me, I was like, and here's one other fact that getting more granular in the data. My gap of variation was higher in the beginning than it is now. Why? Because I had more data to rely on as I got further in. And I was getting better because I had more data and understanding of the markets and what I was doing. I could more accurately predict what it was going to do on the more recent properties. There's only a couple that have been, continued outliers, but it's been so interesting to see that. And I think Sarah and Emily have done that as well. And, I'll give one more set of kudos to really both of them. Probably more on Sarah because of her Bitely property. I'll never forget when I first started talking to her I told her straight to her face, I think you're nuts. I can't believe you even bought this. I told her I would have never bought this property. And guess who wishes he could have bought 10 of those? And that's the thing. And I guess even kind of following this conversation of Sarah stuff, but man, she should pay me for these ads. But I found this property and I was like, dude, there's something about this property that's catching me. And she goes, oh my God, I wish, but there's no data. I'm like, you of all people tell me, oh no, there's no data. I'm like, I'm telling you, this is cool. A couple weeks later, we're still on the market. I go, let's look at it again. She was like, I don't know, man. I kind of want to do it. I'm like, that's what I'm saying. And then she said, I don't know. It's still kind of crazy. And then after a couple of days, we said, you know what? Let's really give this some real thought. Let's get serious about it. That property became known as Orange Cadillac. And this property, when you just looked at the listing photos, you said, there's something special about this property just from the listing photos. And we said, we can make this better. We can add amenities. We can do some unique things. And we sure did, man. There's this weird, ugly, all cement bunker-esque room, 2 rooms. We blew out the wall, turned it into like this theater, speakeasy theater and like bar area that's got a hidden door that you got to slide to get to it. And then we added a hot tub. It already had a pool there. It had a waterfall feature and pond. So it's had all these cool things going on. It had some Viking appliances. And we bought it for $500. And we were just going to buy it, just her and I. And in the process, we said, you know what? What if we brought in investors so we didn't have to bring the money in? And before we knew it, in 2 weeks, we raised all the money for it. And I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. And it was our first shot at doing like kind of a mini syndication, deal, little GPLP situation. They still have voting rights. That's one thing we wanted to build in there. They have contingent voting rights because we wanted to make sure that they had some say. And this goes back to like being clever with your partnership structuring. We did have an SEC attorney to look it over, so we're good. But that being said, we projected, we're like, hey, this thing should do at least 150 is what we thought. And we there's some upper end opportunities with that property, but we finally bought it last November. I think we got it up and running at the very end of January. It probably might have been the first week of February. And we had some, oh crap moments. And mind you, all 5 of us as partners are all Airbnb operators, all of us. And it's kind of like putting 5 drummers in a room and saying, play on the same beat. And they're all going to do it different. And it was kind of tough, but we agreed that, my wife, Sam, and Sarah would be the head of that. And we kind of had to, there was input and some of it was great. All of the input was great. It was all experienced input, but not all of it was Michigan experienced. And we agreed to change it up. We said, you know what, maybe we'll learn something. Let's let go. Cause we didn't start off very strong. We were actually a little worried for like the first 45 days. We said, okay, we'll try some of those things. And it wasn't hitting. And I had a freak out moment. I said, stop, we're doing it our way. Nope. So I'm going back to what works for me. And then boom, start hitting. And like there's some things about like your local knowledge that you gotta run with and you gotta be proud of. Sometimes too utopian is a bad move. I'll give you more in a minute, but go ahead.
Yeah, can you kind of dig into that? Like what was the Michigan knowledge versus like, oh, maybe West Coast knowledge or Florida knowledge or whatever? Because there are definitely different short-term rental markets. Yeah. So what kind of things do you think were more specific that you guys decided to change?
I think there was a little bit of pride about, no, our home's worth this starting off, but and it's funny because we have a house in Traverse City that when we started there, we started off proud. And we said, no, this home deserves this. And that was the worst damn thing we could have done. And we shot ourselves in the toe for like 40.
What does that mean physically in the physical world? You start off proud.
With a number that was too high. You got to prove yourself. You got to prove that you're a property worth staying at, right? So we have a new rule where we lower our price pretty significantly for the first 10 stays. Until we got 10 stays, then we start working our way up. But if you don't start with I'd rather people go, I can't believe I got such a great deal on this one that like I'm leaving the most excellent review like possible. And now everybody's going to read that the top 10 reviews are all 5s and holy crap, what a win. I hope to God this will be available for me the next time me and my family come up. Those are the kind of responses we got. Sam is a godsend, best host I've ever had. The design, everything was comfortable. The kitchen was stocked like you wouldn't believe. It even had a mandolin. Like the craziest things, like, you know, like when you get those responses where they're like, I was home and then some. I felt like people were looking over my shoulder, predicting what I was going to want, and just had it. Like when you do that, when you leave with that focus of hospitality and amenities, it really hits, and care. You know, you're checking in. It doesn't all have to be automated. I recommend you definitely throw in a couple, like, depends on your scale and your system. Don't get me wrong. But really showing that there's a human behind there is huge. And think about all the DMs we all get today, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't tell if it's a bot, if it's just a VA or whatever. But like today, somebody sent me something. I was sure it was a bot, and then they made a joke that only would have applied to me. I'm like, that VA and that bot could not be smart enough to come up with that. And I was like, I was going to delete you, dude, until you said that, and now you have my ear. And something about when you ask those questions, and think about this as a host, when you ask those questions about, hey, what are you coming out for? What are you coming to enjoy your stay? Like, oh, I'm coming up with my family, blah, blah, or whatever. Or it's anniversary. Okay. Their first day they check in, the first thing you should be saying is, hey, I want you to have the best time for your anniversary or with your family. We made sure that, you know, you have access to, you reconnect it. Otherwise, it's just a nuisance question to them, right?
Yeah.
They're like, get out of my ear. Like, you don't need to know what I'm doing. It's private, right? Go ahead, man.
Hormozy talks about automating as much as you can, but personalize as much as you can. I love that, because I've never heard anyone talk about that. My next question is going to be, what's your favorite automation that you use to scale? But really what I'm going to ask is, how have you peppered in these personal touches along the way?
Well, and sorry, I just want to throw a little jab in too, like that. If for anybody that listened to that little nugget, what a brilliant SOP to have for a VA that might be running your stuff. Like, hey, you ask them why they're coming, and then you need to circle back and see if you answered that question. That's brilliant, man. I love that. But then, sorry, go ahead with Yoni's.
No, for sure. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. So you're going to laugh. And this is the part that's kind of crazy to people. We don't have a whole lot of like automations. We just have a couple really good VAs. And we did build out our SOPs, and it's funny. Like, I think people are going to hear SOPs, standard operating procedures, right?
Yeah.
What are your plans for how you work? If somebody's sick that day, you give them this so the other person doesn't drop the baton. That's what an SOP is. People don't even know that, right? But when they hear this, some of these people are listening to this call and going, oh shit, I don't have SOPs yet. I got to get these. Hey, can I get your SOPs? Can I use them as my basis? And they freak out about this. Like, oh, I got to have this check item list. And it's good to have, but you can try to take from anybody else, but how you run your business, it might not be applicable. It just, you know, it might be their business might be completely different. And that's why, like, sometimes I don't think you need to overthink sharing your SOPs. Like, I'm not saying, I mean, if everybody reaches out and wants my SOPs, maybe I'll say maybe.
Depends if you're a bot or not.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Are you a bot? Did you say, I need a good joke before I get to you. But the thing is, like, how you work is not going to be the same. Same when people are getting into real estate sales, as like when new agents come to our brokerage, we got just over 70 right now. But like a lot of them come and they're like, how can I be successful? How can I make money? I go, well, choose your poison, buddy. Like, what do you want? What are you good at? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, are you okay with making phone calls? Are you okay with door knocking? Do you prefer to be an attractor? Are you good with social media? Like, I'm not good with any of that. I'm like, you're going to be broke. You got to pick something you're going to be good at, and you got to run with it. Same with Airbnb. Like, you might be a great host. You may be great at just setting up properties as Airbnbs. You might be great at just financing Airbnbs or finding them, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're good at all of those, and you're just a unicorn. I wouldn't even call myself a unicorn. I'm good at pretty much all of it, but I wouldn't say I'm great at everything. Mm-hmm. I'm great at finding properties, though. That's one thing I've really trained myself to be. When it comes to managing, I know what to do, but I don't have the capacity anymore. So my wife, she handles a lot of that, and agreeing to a system. I think, and Dave, I know you know this, relationships, right? Between partnerships, spouses, maybe girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. There's nothing more special than getting your person, you know, platonic or otherwise, in sync with you. Mm-hmm. It is a game changer. And I promise you, my wife did not care for real estate when we started. When I'd go to like real estate meetups or whatever, she was like, oh my God, this again? Oh my God, I can't wait to go. Oh, this sucks. And she's not terrible. She doesn't sound that terrible. I'm exaggerating. She's gonna probably punch me in my shoulder when I leave. But the point is, you never know how you're going to adapt or what's going to call to you. And when I had a 4-unit, I decided to convert 2 of the units to short terms. Kept 2 as long. Those are still doing very well. I had 1 unit managed by one of my old partners, and she did a good job. But the 2nd unit I was about to turn over, the long-term tenant was leaving. I was like, let's rehab this thing. And I went to Sam and I was like, hun, what do you think? You got your real estate license. You don't really use it, and she's got a pharmacy license too. That's her focus. But I said, what if you manage this? And she said, it's not really my thing. I said, I get that. But what if you did? What if you did and like you finally found a way into real estate that maybe you'd enjoy? And she's like, well, I kind of like the hospitality thing. And I was like, she's like, what if I ruin it? I was like, if you ruin it, easy. I give it back to our friend. Like, I'll let her manage it or I'll manage it, whatever. And she was like, I don't know. I'm afraid I'll ruin it. I was like, I don't want you to be afraid about ruining it, but I'm glad you're afraid of that. It means you care, right?
Yeah.
Being afraid is a sign of care. So I saw that. And I was like, I'm willing to bet on that, right? So I was like, your call. I'll help you design it. I'll help you set it up. I'll help you get things moving. You take it over. And what did she do? She did better than it's ever been managed compared to the other unit. And then we added another unit to her. I was like, can you handle this? She's like, I don't know if I do a bad job. Like, you said that last time, whatever. It's fine. We keep going. Before you knew it, about last summer, we were in Jamaica for a real estate conference, really cool one. And it was all real estate professionals and, owners, big, build to rent models, you name it. And the head guy of the conference called out everybody in the audience, said, hey, who's on the verge of quitting their job? And it was a pretty powerful thing. This is Terry. And I was like, oh man, I was like, you should raise your hand. She was like, shut up. I was like, you're so close. You're so close. And so he had met us the day before at the pool. And he goes, you, points right at her. And I just saw her just, like a turtle. And she stands up. She goes, you, like, how long till you can retire or quit your job? And she goes, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. And she goes, why can't you do it by November? And she went blank for a second. She was like, I don't know, maybe. And she's like, I want you to promise everybody you can do it. You can be financially good by November. She's like, I might actually be, to be making 6 figures after 1 year in co-hosting. She was already approaching 6 figures. And so, because she was doing good. She was good. We had a really good system. I'd find properties. I'd set people up. I'd buy properties. I'd give them to her. It was a really good system. And she agreed in front of everybody. And sure as shit, she quit in November. And her year anniversary is coming up real quick. So
hell yeah, dude. That's really a fantastic
exciting. And now co-hosting is almost at 200.
Oh my gosh.
And that's so we added about 100 in income per year from just co-hosting. But I think that we were able to grow at that rate because we've been doing so much. We've built so much trust in the community. And if we hadn't been doing that, I'm sure we wouldn't have grown at that rate. Not with the level of relationships and trust we have with our clients, but it is what it is. I'm sorry. I know there's so many caveats to this tale. But
dude, you're a monster with a big heart. That's all I'll say.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. That's a real compliment. Same
absolutely. See, yeah, I knew as soon, like the first conversation you and I ever had, you were like 2 Midwest boys, and we just like hit it off right from the get go. And I'm like, all right, yeah, this guy's a beast. We love him. So now, with the portfolio the way that it is, like replacing a W-2 income, like that's a big thing that everybody looks towards. And so do you think that like co-hosting, like if somebody wanted to like, hey man, I need to get out of my job ASAP, do you think it's trying to do co-hosting? Is it trying to do arbitrage? Is it trying to find partnerships? Like, what do you think maybe would be like the best first step that a newbie could make if they were trying to get into the real estate game?
So I know... So I was in San Diego right after you and I met in Bel Air. And I was on the co-hosting and arbitrage panel, coincidentally. And it was funny because I would have much rather been on a scaling and ownership type of panel, but I was on that when they needed to fill, and I was like, I got you, let's do it. But I'm not a big arbitrage fan, kind of like you. And it's because there's no wealth building activity there. And I speak on this all the time. Like, you cannot have control of that property. And I've done one arbitrage and it was extremely successful. And I didn't keep, yep, my man. So it's like, that's the thing. Like, within the first 3 years of owning it, cash on cash was great, but stress on time was not. It's like whenever there was a fix, especially when you're brand new, you don't want to pay for the fix. You want the landlord to pay for it because you're broke. You're still broke. And you're like, I don't want to put money into your asset. But the thing is, that's also showing you where you're at with your business mind. And it's hard to put money into somebody else's asset, and it's going to eat at you when you do that. So that's why a lot of people don't end up wanting to stay in arbitrage. There's people that have made tons of money, but I think fast money can be, fast money.
Comes in quick and go away quick.
I've actually put a fair amount of thought into this because we're also trying to grow our social media followings, and you see way more people talking about arbitrage. And I realized the things that grow on social media are the things that have low barrier to entry. Anybody can do arbitrage. So you have all these people saying for $0, you're going to make 10 grand a month, 50, whatever they say and it makes me sad because I want to bring up something specific, Matt, to your point about putting money into the asset. I love that I learned arbitrage because I learned Airbnb and I learned how to deal with guests, and I learned how to, story that came off to my head is I had somebody who was allergic to things. I door dashed them vegetarian food to make them happy, to get a good review. Like I've gone overboard, but specifically what I'm thinking about is I had a bad porch with no railing and the steps weren't fixed for 6 months into the lease. So I was getting dinged on bad review, on bad review, on bad review. Now the inside looked gorgeous because I spent top dollar to furnish it like a beast. But I kept getting killed because the outside was not 1,000% safe. So but I learned the business. So David and I always talk about it unique builds by the parks, national parks, MTRs in the big cities. But we never talk about arbitrage because we're both kind of freaked out a little. Not to say we never would do it, but those are the issues. I don't know. I just wanted to add on to your point.
No, you nailed that, man. And that's the thing. Let's say you got a 5-year run out of it, which a lot of these people talking about it on the low barrier to entry because we'll get you started with no money in, blah blah. There's always money in. There's money one way or another. I promise you that. But even if it goes for 5 years, 7 years, when the landlord does not want to renew because either they go, man, this person's been making up money on it, I want to do this, or B, they get to a rate that they're trying to charge you that you don't want to pay. It's not as reasonable for you to still make the same amount of money to validate your effort. You have all this furniture that you're not going to be able to repurpose. Furniture does not travel well. It doesn't. Let it go. Doesn't happen. I would say it's really small items, and then if anything gets broken or mangled along the way, it's a pain in the butt. And just moving it and storing it, I've tried it twice. Tried to repurpose furniture twice. I will never do it again. It's always more time and effort and energy, and some stuff just breaks. Or by the time it's there, it's like something's funny about it or doesn't fit the room as well. Trust me, the furniture cost is gonna be an L. And once that landlord doesn't renew, presuming that was the only one you had, you have no business now. You have zero business.
Yep.
You can take what you learned, but your business no longer exists.
It's exactly what wholesalers or flippers or anything like that. You literally have a job. You are purchasing a job that you need to work at to generate cash flow. And if you're not doing that job, the cash flow stops. As soon as you stop working, it stops. So I think people mistake and they swap arbitrage with real estate investing. And that's not true, because with true real estate investing, you should be making money while you sleep, and it should be generating, wealth for generations to come. And so with arbitrage, you're only getting one of the levers of real estate, and that's cash flow. And cash flow is the only thing anybody wants to talk about because everybody hates their job and they want to be able to quit. And so you're not getting all the really, really big things that people, once they start getting into a real portfolio, start to realize: tax advantages, appreciation on your property, depreciation, principal pay down on your property. Like all of those things combined, like you were saying, you can basically have a cash flow net zero property, but with the principal pay down, the appreciation, depending on what market you're in, speaking in generalities, you're typically still coming out ahead. So that's why ownership is such a big thing. So arbitrage for training wheels, ownership for, wealth moving forward.
I did a baseline test where I talked to Ryan about it. And I was I was curious to see if you would agree. I said, presuming a $250,000 purchase that was cash flow net zero. If you bought that property and it was just that, and we presume general 3% appreciation, and some tax write-offs from basic write-offs from your initial year, you're minimally probably looking at $15,000 to $30,000 of dollars saved or earned between the appreciation and the tax benefit. Minimal. It could be 50, but minimal, just starting off with that property. So even if you did that, if you annualize $15K, that's over $1,000 a month, right? And for most people, that's a win. Like if you're going to be paying $45,000 to the government that year, then that's $30,000 now, right?
Yep.
And that $15K, that's a hell of a vacation, maybe a couple of vacations for people. And it could be a car payment. It could be a few things. Could be rent payment for some people if they're really living like simple, like maybe a single person living in a studio, 1 bed, 2 bed. I don't know. But that's the point we keep having to hit home, because people really miss out on the fact that even if it's an L, people talk about, oh, I lost money. Like, not as much as you would have probably with the arbitrage, and you still have the damn business. And even if you don't like the business, you can sell it, and you're probably gonna have a break even or sell it for a profit at the end of that year. Yeah. So I think it's still the move.
Yeah. All anybody wants to talk about is cash flow, and all they want to talk about is what's the property going to do year 1. No one thinks about what's the property going to be doing year 5, year 10, year 15, and it doubles in price in that amount of time.
Free business idea that I always like float around in my head is like somebody should have like a rating system for influencers, or whatever word we want to use, to like rate their course like before somebody buys, because, or like the validity of it, because in the bulk of the Airbnb noise space, I actually know people that bought arbitrage courses and then like were tapped out of money. So the little bit of courage they had also was depleted. So even if they get another 10 grand, they're not going to try again because they got completely, screwed. I come from a more fortunate situation where I have some, whatever, we don't need to get into it. I have some help. So I'm more courageous when you have help. But I know people, so like anyone listening to this, like, get with Matt, send him a DM, because like this is a guy of substance. And if you've gotten screwed, this is somebody who is giving you very, like you hear in this podcast, depth of strategy, and not just like telling you what you want to hear and what sounds good and makes your heart race. It's telling you what your brain's gonna be like, oh, that makes sense. Like there's all these different ways of business, and he learned these 4 levels. So I just saying that for the audience.
Yeah, and this will be a great segue into kind of our closing part that I wanted to get into. So you mentioned that you were doing a little bit of coaching. So tell us what's going on with that, and how can we kind of like pump that out to the masses. So if somebody does want to get a hold of somebody that's actually legit, is actually crushing it, and they're in a good market that's got a low barrier to entry in the Midwest, and they want to get started, how can they get a hold of you? And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thank you guys so much already. Like these questions, these comments, you guys are too kind. Well, yeah, to answer that question, you can always reach out to me on my link in bio on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, YouTube, you name it. But I got a little stand store thing there. And if you can get connected, either we have a mini course for the STR Legend Mastermind, and that's a really good way to get connected on depth of thought. We talk about nuance. And the biggest things that we do that are different is we talk about acquisition on a level probably nobody talks about, because I think I'm a real estate broker, I'm a mortgage broker. I've negotiated literally thousands of deals. And because of that, I can tell you everything. I can even hold your hand, especially if you're in Michigan. There's nothing we can't do with you guys. I think it's really fun because we're providing the actual mortgage side too. That really makes it easy. You're not obligated to use that, but that conversation becomes so. If your barrier of stress and fear is getting into your first purchase, oh my God, we are going to pop that balloon. It'll be over. But we're going to show you that to you with data. We analyze hundreds of deals every single week. We have a data spreadsheet that we give exclusive access to all of our students and anybody on our VIP exclusive access list. So there's some really cool things we do. But beyond that, I think a lot of people are great at teaching Airbnb. And I think some people are really great at design. Some people are really great at arbitrage. But what we try to teach is real scale. Like how do you really scale? It's the VAs. You got to get good VAs. And anybody that tells you when you scale, it's okay to not keep your super house status, that is bullshit. Bullshit. Anybody says that, delete. I'm sorry, there's one person that I really like, and I can't believe they say it. I don't know if it's just for clickbait, but like I really respect that person too. But I will never, ever say that, because that is still a moniker of how successful you have been in your response rate over a large portfolio. And that does say something about how you operate. And plus, we're going to teach you guys a little bit more with long-term rentals. We're even doing some stuff with insurance. It's an ever-growing, evergreen program. So there's always things you're going to learn on: scaling, partnerships, capital raising, you name it. So it's pretty in-depth. It's pretty wide too. So very exciting.
Very nice.
Hopefully I didn't go too off the deep end there, guys. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect, man. That was perfect. Because, there's lots of people that are looking around for actually legit people that actually know what the hell they're talking about. Because it's such an unfortunate thing that if you're a good marketer on Instagram, you don't actually have to know business all that well to be successful by slinging out a bunch of coaching courses and blah, blah, blah. And so you are somebody that can, walk the walk as well behind, what you're saying. So we're super excited to have you on, man. And we appreciate you coming on and chatting with us today. I think this has been one of the easiest flowing podcasts we've ever had. This is fantastic, man. We really appreciate you coming on. Anything else before we get you out of here?
No, guys. Thank you again. Really appreciate it. And again, if you guys want to find me, check my link in bio on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever.
All right, go follow my broker Matt, the Midwest beautiful man over there, and he will get you set up with a Michigan property. All right, Yoni, anything before we get you out?
One of the best pods we've ever had, straight up. And you can check. We never say that. So,
All right, cool. This was one of the best episodes of the Fetchit Podcast. Thank you guys. Until next time. Peace.
Hey, guys. Take care.